and CEO of Alpha Sustainable Projects. They both are gonna set the scene and present to you the current issues around circular economy, including waste, both in Germany and Israel. After the main two speakers of the event, we shall have brilliant short lectures that would dwell on the best practice examples and knowledge sharing circular economy. We will discuss circular economy and construction in Israel and in Germany. The speakers shall be Dr. Anna Braune, Anne Winkelkotte, Ruth Abraham, and Dotan Sela. Each would speak for 10 minutes. Following each speaker, you may ask them questions. The time allocated for each speaker for questions is 5 minutes. And following the four speakers, we shall have a discussion and a question answer sort of slot. So you can ask your questions. I want to emphasize that you may type your questions at all given time during the webinar by chat. You're always welcome to do that. And while we have 5 minutes for questions, you may raise your hand using the feature on Zoom and ask the question verbally if you wish to do so. So without further delay, I want to happily invite Dr. Christine Lemaitre, the CEO of the DGNB, to present to you her speech and her first presentation. Christine, you are welcome to present. Floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for making that happen. We are very excited as well for that first common event, and I hope we will do many more to follow. I think we've been discussing to do something together for many, many months, and even after or especially through the challenges of the Corona pandemic, it was not so easy. So I'm very happy that we finally start. I don't really have a formal presentation. I just would like to give a little point of view from our perspective. First of all, I think this is very important that we have this international collaboration and that knowledge exchange and that exchange in experiences. And when we thought about what kind of topic could we choose to do the first common event, we both very quickly agreed that circular economy, I think, is one of the big topics at the moment being discussed in conferences, on social media. So there's a lot of dynamic around the topic of circular economy, but at the same time, the question is always, how can you bring it to market? How can you really make a difference? How can you really see circular economy as a tool to achieve the common goals, to fight the climate crisis, to make sure we're not wasting more resources, to prevent our loss of biodiversity. So for us at DGNB, circular economy is really a means to an end. And we see that it's a very important topic, that there's a lot of dynamic around it, but at the same time that we need as well tools and a common understanding on how to bring it into building projects and how to make the difference when it comes to buildings all around us. And I think this is very interesting as well for us, this event, to see where the market stands in Israel, where we're in Germany, where common topics we share, where we can exchange knowledge, experiences, and how we can drive that topic forward together. Because I think it's kind of, we all face similar challenges all over the world. And I think collaboration, especially in the world of the Green Building Councils, is really a key thing in order to make that change happen and to really provide our members as well knowledge and expertise and experiences. So hopefully today we will not only hear about great solutions, but maybe as well about honest challenges, because I think from challenges and from mistakes we've made, we learn a lot. And I'm really looking forward to that very open and transparent and honest exchange of experience around circular economy. And like I said earlier, I hope this is the first event of many more to come, and that we can really deepen our collaboration and exchange around the whole field around sustainable buildings. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Chen, the chairman of the Israeli Green Building Council.
Yes, thank you so much, Christine. We would like to emphasize that we are equally and mutually thrilled and happy for the cooperation. I'm happy to leave it to Chen to now present his perspective and point of view and to welcome you all here. As said before, Chen is the chairman of ILGBC and he is the founder and CEO of Alpha Green Projects. Chen, the floor is yours. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Janine, and thank you very much, Christine, for the wonderful introduction and overview. And thank you all on both sides of the sea, of the Mediterranean Sea, that you joined us today. And I just want to connect, Christine, to something that you said. Climate crisis, the climate crisis is probably humanity's greatest challenge. And since it's a global challenge, we all assume that the only way to address it is to tie our connections and our hands together in all countries on the international level. And that is the reason that I'm so happy that this is finally happening today. For us, it's a new beginning. And we hope to strengthen the links with the German GBC to really push forward the cause of the sustainability. So I would like to please share with you a few slides. And I think this is a great opportunity to share our common thoughts. And we know that the German market is worldwide known for its high standards of sustainability and innovation. But very modestly, we also want to show some of the things that we are working on here in the Israeli market. But first, before I just go into a few examples, and I will talk briefly over the next 10 minutes, I just want to give the context again to all of us, and perhaps some who are not that familiar with the crisis in which we are facing. Before that, the ILGBC mission is to tie the commercial sector, the academy sector, and the government and municipality sector. And the interconnection of all these bodies could produce amazing sustainability solutions. At Alpha, or in the local market, we are working and completed several LEED projects to the LEED maximum platinum level. But again, to understand the context of all our efforts, we have to start with this. And as I said, it's our greatest challenge yet, and it changes the world in which we're living day by day. And if we previously needed the slides from Antarctica, we don't need to look far today, because it's happening right in our next door. And the global aim is to limit temperature rise to no more than 1.5 Celsius. And we have to remember why this is so important, because the difference between 1.5 Celsius to 2 degrees is dramatic in terms of impacts on our nature around us. And therefore, it is essential that we stay within the 1.5 framework. And as we know, most of the carbon, most of the emissions come from building operations and materials, almost 40%. And that means that buildings will have to be zero carbon in order for us to meet that 1.5 degrees Celsius limit. And when we're looking at zero energy, so we're looking at buildings which on an annual average consume as much as they produce, so the annual average is zero. So these goals have to be that 2030, all new buildings will have to be zero energy and 40% less embodied carbon. And by 2050, the challenge is much, much greater to take all the existing buildings and limit them to zero embodied carbon. So is this possible in the current market that we're facing? So again, we have some new projects and the first projects in Israel that achieved zero energy. So I'll briefly show them. The first project is a small kindergarten in Be'er Sheva, done by us together with Nomi Gelbert that I saw here in the meeting, and with a very talented group of professionals and architects for larger than life. And the project was designed according to the passive solar design, and some of the shadings on the building are also solar photovoltaic. And we can now see after a year that the project, which was designed to be net positive, is actually functioning very well. And in addition to the fact that it's a very, very healthy environment for the children that occupy it, children with cancer, then in addition to that, it's also positive in its energy balance. The next project is Jaffa Port. This is done with Atarim, and the whole compound is a renovation of an existing infrastructure which was built in the 1930s. So it's very important to restore the actual look of the buildings. And we did here an analysis to see the potential of the roofs to produce electricity, and with a number of technologies, including wind, which is integrated now into the design, we are going ahead also with a system, an innovative system, which produces energy from the waves, which is on the harbor of the project. And also with the restaurants that will be here on site, they will turn waste into energy through biogas. So this is also part of the renewable energy sources that will be on the project. And in total, this project is now ending construction, and we hope that next year it will be occupied. And we assume that in the beginning of the project, the energy balance will be no less than 65% net zero. We probably won't reach the 100% in the first year, but there will be additions to the renewable energy, and therefore we hope that in the next few years we'll be able to balance the energy consumption of the whole compound to 100%, which would be an accomplishment. The last project I wanted to show is this simple building in Givatayim. It's an existing building that belongs to Amot, a developer in Israel. And we did here with Amot an analysis to see the potential to produce renewable energy from the entire facade of the building, including the roof and the walls. And the question here, and I think that's the topic, is the use of existing buildings. Instead of tearing them down, to renovate them. And here we had a chance, Amot had a chance to renovate the entire building because there was a single tenant that went out from this building, and therefore the renovation was deep, and it turned into a much more technological and sustainable project, which is now being submitted to LEED Platinum. And I think the best part about this project is that the building reuses 100% of its structure and envelope. There was no waste that went away from this building at all. And again, to look at ways to reduce embodied carbon, there is a massive opportunity to use existing buildings instead of building new material with new materials, new concrete. And therefore, I think that will be probably the building's best contribution. In addition to that, the south facade is a photovoltaic facade, which also produces a very nice quantity of renewable energy. So I think the closing slide is again to look at this challenge as an opportunity. The building sector will have to make a massive change in direction. It's been going on at a certain direction for the last 100 years. And now I think we all understand that we'll have to shift to a new direction, and this creates opportunities, new products, new regulations, new research, and many opportunities to make buildings even better than they are today and much more sustainable. So thank you very much, and I'll pass on the baton.
Thank you so much, Chen, for the inspiring presentation. It's always a pleasure to hear what you have to add to the discourse. So do we have any questions here from our audience? Does anyone have a question or anything to say or comment on what we have said?
I have a question.
Of course. The floor is yours, Elias.
Elias, yes. Hi.
Hi.
First of all, thank you for the presentation, Tuchen. And I wanted to ask about the existing building. How did you deal with the insulation of it? Because I'm pretty certain that the insulation level, the existing building was lower than what the green building code would require. So how did you improve that, if you improved that?
Yeah, sure. So as I said, every challenge has an opportunity. So if you can look at the lower side, lower left side, you can see here where my mouse is. On the left is the marble that was on the facade of this building. And we added, or Alcon is the company that did this, aluminum construction. So they added the facade, and this is a prefabricated facade that has insulation in it. So actually, you're right, the existing building had no insulation at all. And by adding this external cladding, we were able to really enhance the insulation of the building to today's standards.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Elias, and thank you, Chen. I see that we have a hand raised. Shmuel, hi.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you too. I want to ask next question. I want to ask you how the approach of carbon zero building can support resolution housing problems of low socioeconomic groups of population and poor groups of population in Israel and Germany. Yeah, I ended.
Okay, thanks. Christine or Chen, do you want to address the question? Or
yeah, I'm not sure if I understood it correctly. I think the question was, how can zero carbon emission buildings contribute to the housing challenge? Was that the question?
Yeah, how this can to contribute to poor and low socioeconomic groups of population?
Well, I think, I don't know, I think one thing is it contributes by, that we're taking responsibility in terms of doing what we can to reduce the CO2 emissions from the building sector. I'm not sure if it really is a contribution to the social economic challenges we're facing. I think everywhere in the world, I think this is not the need for affordable housing, I think, is as current in Germany as it is in Israel, as it is in many other countries in the world. So to me, it is more like the baseline and the technical requirement and part of our responsibility that we achieve high quality building and a good architecture for our built environment, because this is what it is about. I mean, this is our built environment, and we should feel healthy and happy and safe in the buildings, in the cities we live in. So I don't know if that kind of answers the question a little bit.
And I'll be glad to add to Christine's answer from the Israeli perspective. I think that the Israeli construction sector is characterized by being as an immigrant country. Israel built fast and cheap for the past at least 70 years, and many of the houses are poorly insulated. They were built with low budget, and this creates social injustice and energy injustice, because low-income families often live in housing and dwellings which are not adequate. And therefore, as I said before, since this is an opportunity and buildings will have to change and government will have to invest in upgrading construction, then I just showed an example of how we can take an old building and make it more energy efficient and therefore more energy justice. So again, I think this is something that could contribute to the well-being of people, although the tag price for sustainability is typically a bit more higher.
Thank you so much, Chen. I would just, sorry, did anyone? I would like to just mention that we are recording this event and this webinar. This is something that I forgot to mention at the beginning, so apologies. As mentioned before, you are always welcome to type your questions on the chat. We will try to address them like immediately after you type them, but you know that we have a very set agenda. So at the very end, we may just address all the questions together. So don't hesitate to type your questions and we would answer them at some point in the webinar. Thank you so much. So I would like now, with your permission, to invite to the floor Dr. Anna Braune. Anna is the Director Research and Development at DGNB, and her talk shall be about the best practice examples and knowledge sharing circular economy, and about circular construction in both countries, with emphasis on Germany, of course. So the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. I hope this works now. Can you see the full screen? Yes. Yes. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually, I will give a little bit more, I think, methodological perspective, or share some insights of the instruments we are using as a Green Building Council to address the topic, to get to a more circular building and real estate industry. As how the situation is in Germany, and I'm really focusing on the material perspective, so I'm not talking about climate aspects at all, but with a focus on only the issues of material aspects. We are generating a lot of waste in Germany that is not at all, can be seen circular. More than the half of the waste streams in Germany come from the built environment, and it is increasing more and more. So there's a trend to even generate more waste. And the sheer amount is so incredible. So we're throwing away everything, nearly everything. And this is actually a situation that is not sustainable at all. And last year, we had a situation in Germany with the energy crisis due to the war in Ukraine. All prices for all products went up incredibly, and the climate crisis in Germany also led to situations where materials cannot be delivered to Germany anymore. So the River Rhine, for example, where a lot of materials are shipped, had a too low level so that the ships couldn't go anywhere. And so we really got into a situation in Germany last year where the prices to build and to get materials in time sort of went totally crazy. So, at that time, everybody woke up and said, oh, we need a much more circular way of building in Germany. And the circular concept is seen less as a concept to do something good for the environment, but it's really about resource independency, because Germany is quite resource scarce, like other countries in Europe as well, and I think for Israel as well. It is also a concept to create safe workplaces in Germany, because actually we are importing a lot of material and everything is sort of outside. And we want to generate more and better workplaces here in Germany as well. And last but not least, of course, it reduces negative environmental impacts. But in my thinking and in our thinking, the circular concept is really like a motor for more sustainability. So the effects of building circular are social, economic, and environmental. And what we have generated as an organization in Germany, so sorry for the German language on the right-hand side, but that we defined what is a circular building and real estate sector. So what is our idea and what is circular construction? And we did not speak, we developed this definition, and it's a document like 6 pages. What is circular construction last year? And it is one of the it is downloaded incredibly because everybody wants to join this movement. So I can just recommend you to define it for you as well. And what we did is not that we defined a circular building, but we defined what actors would have to do. So actors of a circular real estate and construction sector take into account that the building stock is a valuable source. So the last example that we saw, it is about generating the knowledge that the existing buildings are valuable, so that you can do something about it, and that all materials that have been used to build these buildings cannot just be thrown away, and the future and the next building will be better and more sustainable, but the existing building stock is really a high value. It can be a storage of materials as well, and that existing material flows, so contributing to the circular economy today is very important. So the use of recycled materials, the reuse of materials is very important to do it today. And last but not least, of course, it is important to build in a way that future generations can make use of the buildings once they are demolished or once they are reconstructed or whatsoever. But we need to have this hierarchy. What we have is great. There are circular materials available, make use of them. And then third, whatever you do, make it for the future as well circular. And this results then in sort of a decoupling of the economic activity of the consumption of non-renewable resources. So our document in focus circular building also contains hands-on, sorry for that, it's in German, but a hands-on checklist, and we're providing planners sort of the knowledge of, what does it mean? Okay, I want to be a part of the circular construction movement, so what can I do? And we generated a one-pager. This is use this checklist whenever you think about a building, whenever you talk with your client about circularity. So there's like impulses that people can use. And we not just had, the big topics, but it's really specific ideas that we want to plant into their heads, and that it's part of every discussion whenever you start renovating or a building or thinking of a new building or whatsoever. So this checklist is a very good instrument, I would say, and it is not the end of the knowledge, but it's just the beginning, and to plant it into the heads, because then we can change things with our hands. And then and then we have, of course, our certification scheme. DGNB has an own certification scheme, and here's an example of a few of our certified buildings. And within the scheme, in 2018, we had a new release. Next release will be next month. So version 23 is due in April. But the last one we have generated in 2018, we defined a core topic that was circular economy at that time. So in 2018, we said, so we're redoing our certification. Circular economy, circular construction is a core topic, one of the 6 core topics that we had during the revision of our own certification scheme. And this led to that with applying all the circular aspects we defined in the schemes, you already get like 1/3 of the points you can get. So when you build circular, here in this example, it's a new construction, you already get 1/3 of the points. And it's not just one criteria like a circular circular construction, but it's that we want people to calculate the life cycle assessment of buildings. So really like material wise and everything. We want them to use materials that do not contain any hazardous substances, because if you have hazardous substances in your building, you're not able to do something with this in the future. We are giving points for using recycled materials. We give points for calculating as well, or optimizing the cost from a life cycle perspective. We give them points for flexible and reusable building structures, and of course for dismantleability and recycling friendliness. Additionally, we have in the meantime developed a new certificate on dismantling, or a deconstruction certificate. It contains of a few criteria, and with this certificate, which is now on the market since 2 years, we have identified sort of the points where we say, if you do a deconstruction, how could you do this very sustainable? And this certificate is very well received on the market, and nobody has done this before, and people are very thankful, because now they can say, oh, I now get some impulses how to, if I have to deconstruct or partly deconstruct, what can I do from a sustainability perspective with it? And then the last instrument, which is quite new, is the Building Resources Passport. In Germany, we have a still new government, and when they started 1.5 years ago, they said, oh, there will be a digital building passport that we are developing. And since we had quite an idea how that should look like, we developed one and proposed it also to the government. I think they need a little bit more time than our organization. And this passport is like an equivalent to an energy passport, but it's a material passport. So with this passport, it's really 1 page. I know it's really a dense page, so maybe we should put it on 2 pages, but anyways, but it's a document that provides transparency on the materials. Where do they come from? Are they coming from are they already reused or recycled? Then what can you do with the materials perspective? Is there something you can do with this future, and how is the documentation, what is the climate impact of the materials. So this passport is an instrument for transparency, and we have some tools already that implement this passport and provide it, so planners can use it and provide it to their clients. And last slide, what we are doing in Germany is we have, from a European perspective, a lot of impulses, I would say, because Europe wants to become a circular continent. And this means that there's instruments like the Levels framework, which is a European framework how to talk about sustainability of buildings. So we use this framework to be also like the European, make everything right from a European perspective. We have the EU taxonomy on green and not green money. There's a circular economy taxonomy that is proposed. There's a circular economy action plan that we also look at. And in Germany, of course, there's a lot of norms and standards, but there's a big movement to make them more circular. And with this, I know it's a little bit theoretically, but it's maybe you can use some of the input as what instruments and ways you can go as an organization to drive the market towards more circular construction. And with this, I'm done and hope that you can take something with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. We really appreciate that. So we can take some questions. We have 5 minutes for questions now. Elias, I see that your hand is raised, so the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks to Anna. It was very inspiring and encouraging. And what's also ahead for the other countries? Germany is always ahead with environmental issues and green buildings. So we look at you as a beacon. So we hope to see more of that happening in other countries, like Israel or other Southern Europe, etc. I have 2 questions. If the guide to dismantle and demolish that you showed, which is really amazing, if it also exists in English, that's one question. And the second is, I know that in Holland, they created a map, I think it's called the materials map or materials harvest map or something of that sort. And I wanted to know if in Germany you've developed this kind of system where people can supply and provide materials and people can find materials in an easy way online. And thank you very much.
Yeah, so thank you so much. So the certificate is not yet available in English, but I have a big confidence in DeepL or Google Translator. If you're super interested, then we just send you the documents, and it's a question of translation. It's not such a big instrument like the new construction certificate, so no 700 pages, only 300 maybe, I don't know, but it's less, of course. It might be even less, I don't know, but I'm happy to send it to you, and we can think about how you can make use of it. No worries. And with how you can identify materials or building elements to reuse, we do have several initiatives. One is an online platform that has not been developed by DGNB, but something outside. And it's an online platform like a eBay, let's call it like that, where an organization takes care of, it's like an online market platform for reused materials. It's called Concula, and it's really nice. So the materials are specified and identified specifically, and you can go there and say, okay, I want to use this one in my next building, for example. So it's an online platform. Right. Another initiative is the Madasta platform, which is more generating knowledge and has an idea of having at the end a big cataster of everything that is in our built environment, but maybe to a smaller scale. It could be that for a district, for example, you can apply it, and whatever you do in this district, you have the full knowledge of the materials that are inside. And so then you can really generate the idea of an urban mining, so that you can reuse, share. Then, you know, like in 2 years, there will be coming something that I can put into another building. And that's Madasta. Both, of course, are still small initiatives, but very well received by the market, and a lot of people have interest. And I think these are 2 examples that are really good.
Thank you. Is the Madaster the one by Thomas Rau? Is the one that he developed? Yeah, this one.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, and we have it for the German market as well. And it's in Switzerland and in other countries.
Right. Thank you. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ilias and Anna. Zvi, I saw that you have raised your hand very early, so we'll take your question. The floor is yours. You are on mute, sir. So if you can unmute yourself, we can take your question.
Okay, sorry.
Sure.
One question is, how many recycling firms or factories you have in Germany to produce new materials after you collected the waste and demolition from different buildings? And my second question is, to what extent you produce completely new materials that have, let's say, a high standard? We talked before about zero carbon or energy and things like that. Yeah, and to one last comment. I mean, I wrote a long research about circular economy in waste and demolition. You can find it under my name in one of the Springer books. I think it was published in 2020.
Good. Oh, sorry, I did not know this. Maybe, but thank you so much for the impulse. Okay, so as for recycling, we have a big, of course, industry of deconstruction. So now they start redefining themselves as recycling companies. So they see that whatever they produce and the more clean they work, the materials they generate are, there's market participants that are interested in that because the prices are going up so fast and so high. So for recycled materials, of course, there are some like metals always have been very well received. But I have visited a recycling company of windows manufacturer, aluminum windows manufacturer. It takes 12 minutes to disassemble one aluminum window frame, and there's really high-tech technology inside. But what the company does is that they now provide 95 recycled content, so verified recycled content window frames. So some companies say, okay, I want to have this full cycle and idea because this is my business model. And the carpet manufacturers, we do have many because it's like, you know, it is sexy or whatever to have recycled materials in the consumer, close to the consumer products, I would say, like carpets, and it's becoming a lot more. As for mineral materials, we do have the problem in Germany that the standards are prohibiting using a high share of recycled content. And now the DIN, the Norms and Standard Organization, is changing this because in Switzerland you are allowed, in Germany you're not allowed, and there's no reason but a standard that says, you know, there's a specific proportion that you can use. And but it takes a lot of time to change the standards, and that's a big problem. Yeah, and so from the quality perspective, there are standards again that are very high on, you know, like stability and fire protection and so on, where and also insulation, or the like old windows and new windows you cannot change. But whatever is not affected by these standards, there's no reason not to reuse materials, not to use recycled materials. But the main point is that the manufacturers understand that there's, and they now understood it in the last year. I would say it was the biggest year for recycling in Germany, because we have disrupted value chains. So products that did not come to Germany. And this is a high insecurity for the whole industry, for workplaces, and people now understand that it's more secure to invest into recycling.
Hanin, if I may add to
Sure.
to Anna's answer regarding materials. So just a very, very quick example. We are now building our new office, and we specified reused deck. And it was a bit hard to find reused deck, because typically these decks are being thrown away. And finally we found a reused deck, and we used it, and the installer, our installer, now is doing this as a business, and he's installing reused decks. So what I'm saying is, it's not a question, I think, of manufacturers and product chains so much. I think it's basically a question of market demand. If the demand will be on the market, if consumers and clients will ask for recycled material, then the market will meet the demand. So I think this is something that we have to understand. There's a potential. The beginning is always a bit more costly, a bit more expensive, a bit more problematic to start, and maybe regulation has to kick in. But once it's going, it's just to demand this product.
Thank you so much, Chen, Anna, and Zvi, and Ilyas, who gave questions. Sorry, because we have to keep up with the agenda, so like now we have to move to our next speaker, but we promise you that we see all of your questions and we shall address them at the end of this webinar, because we have 30 minutes allocated for questions. Now I'm happy to invite to the floor Anne Winkelkotte from Kate Whitfield. She shall give us her own perspective on the best practices examples and elaborate on it. Thank you so much for being with us. The floor is yours, Anne.
Thank you. So I will share my screen now. So now you see full screen, right?
Yes,
Perfect.
positive.
Okay, yes, thank you for the invitation. I will give you now a small overview about a circular project. I'm Anne Winkelkotte. I work at Kader Wittfeld Architektur for 3 years now. I'm a sustainability consultant here, and I've studied architecture and sustainable building. And yeah, we are an architectural office. We are established in 1999. We now have more than 180 employees from 25 different nations. Our headquarters is located in Aachen, but we also have a small office in Berlin with 50 employees and a small one in Munich. And we were founded in Austria in Graz. So yeah, why are we here together? I think you probably all know this. The building industry is responsible for 36% of energy consumption, 38% of global warming potential, 50% of raw material, and also over 50% of waste. This is our motivation to build sustainable. We now have experience with sustainability for 14 years now. We are an early DGNB member, and yeah, quite a lot of our projects are already certified. Here you can see some of our projects with certifications. Yeah, most of them are office buildings, but this one is also a shopping hall and this one is a kindergarten. So we also have different building types. When it comes to a new project, we always trying to place the topics of sustainability in an early stage. And for us, every building is a prototype, and we try to always to look of the criteria you see around. They are always important for us, but it really depends on the project, the location and the environment, which of these criteria are more important in a project. So here again, you see some of our projects and the criteria in the middle. And for example, our Moringa project, the LVR or the RG building, they have a material passport. They also have healthy materials. All of the projects you see have renewable energy, but for example, the new Blauhaus also have a photovoltaic system in the facade. We also have a building where we can use the existing building structure, the Hohenzollernring. And in our residential project in Aachen and the Moringa project, we also using reused materials and do also have the water management system. And I will now introduce you to the residential project in Aachen. So yeah, here our focus topics are water management and reused materials in the facade. The project has 108 residential units, of which are 30% social housing. The project is located in Aachen. It's really near to our office. Our office is here, so it's just down the street. Here you see a zoom in of the property. So yeah, you can see that there is a big block. And there was an existing building on the side property. It was a school. Here you see some pictures of the school. Unfortunately, we weren't able to use the existing structure. But yeah, I will come back later to the bricks because we now can use these bricks in our new facade. So yeah, first our design approach. We wanted to open up this big block and to create an urban path network through the inner block. So we want to give the pedestrians the space of the city back. We also wanted to create a city of short distances. So here you see again, visualization is from the center of the buildings. You can see that we also have a lot of greenery in the inside. And yeah, we really wanted to create a green space. You can see this also in the site plan. Here are a lot of green spaces because yeah, green spaces create a retreat in the city. And with this greenery, we can also see 100% of the rainwater naturally. And this isn't only ecological interesting, but it's also economical interesting because our client can save the cost for the sewage. So yeah, here again, some of our elements of the Spawn City. We do have green roofs here. We have water retention boxes underneath the passes. We have a lot of greenery in the ensemble. And we also have water tanks where we can store water for dry seasons for the irrigation of the plants. And these water retention boxes also creates a cool floor because there are these water retention boxes underneath the path. And yeah, here are again some elements. We can have or combine in the roof a photovoltaic system with a green roof. And yeah, the greenery creates a nice microclimate and also is good for the biodiversity in the city. So the next slides are about our facade idea. So when we design facades, we always first analyze the neighborhood. So in these neighborhoods, you see a lot of bricks buildings. So we also decided to use bricks here. And in the competition, we planned with like full or whole bricks. But then in the further planning process, our client wanted, instead of full bricks, smaller facing strips because they are cheaper. Then we have more space in the inside of the building. We can have a thinner wall, and we can also save CO2 because we have now smaller facing strips. But we also now have a composite thermal insulation system, and this isn't demontable. But then there was a turning point in our project because one of our colleagues had the great idea to reuse the bricks from the old building for our new building. And we all thought, yeah, wow, that's a great idea, but we didn't know how to do it. Then we did a research and we found the startup Conclua. This is also the startup with this online shop for reused material. So together with them, we did a first attempt and we tried to save the stones with manpower. And the result of this first attempt was that it's possible that we can save the stones. We can also cut them into facing strips, but it's too expensive, so it's not economical. And the client said, yeah, okay, sorry, that's too expensive for me. And yeah, then there didn't happen anything for a year in a project. And then we were really lucky that our client changed. And the new client really liked the idea of the reusing of the bricks. So he did a research on his own and found another company called Klinkerhistorica. And they told us that, we can make it economical if you just demolish the building the normal way. So we did this. And they also gave the demolisher contractor a little bit money. So he cared a little bit more about the stones. And yeah, the second step was then the on-site preparation, where we separate the stones from the mortar. Then we had the whole bricks. We cut them into facing strips. We not only use the outside of the two cuts, but we can also use the inside. You also see this on the next slide, and then hopefully someday we will reuse them in our new facade. So yeah, and another cool thing, what Klinkerhistorica told us, that we can really use everything of the bricks. So here you can see that we can use solid bricks, and normally you cut those bricks into 2 facing strips, but we then decided we can cut them into more facing strips, and in the inside we have these nice sprinkles. We can also use broken bricks and cut them into smaller facing strips, and we can also use all the rest, the broken pieces, for the substrate, for the greenery on the roof, and also for our outdoor facilities. And by reusing these bricks, we can save 95% of CO2. And the new facing strips will also be tested by an independent institute. So we will receive a building approval because we need one in Germany. And yeah, one last example here. Before the idea of reusing the bricks, we had in the outdoor facilities gravel. And now we can also change this and have the broken pieces for the reused bricks. So yeah, what we've learned is that the process of reused materials isn't standardized yet. So for us, it was really hard. This is also the reason why we, together with Conclua and other partners, develop a new norm for this. And yeah, we are really thankful for our good network, and because we think without this network, it wasn't or isn't possible to do something like this. And for us, the next step is to design a facade with reused materials. What you can also give a further life cycle, because at the moment it is part of this composite thermal insulation system, and it's yeah, hard to give it a third life cycle. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. We highly appreciate that. So now we can take 1 or 2 questions. So if anybody from the audience has a question, then we can take it. Okay, so we have in the meanwhile a question on the chat that says from Yuri. Yuri asks, is there a DGNB equivalent for civil engineering, or is it just government standards? Anne, if you know, or probably Anna, whoever from both of you.
Yeah, maybe that's better for Anna.
Yeah, Anna, do you want to?
I'm just, I don't know. I don't understand the question. I'm sorry. Is there DGNB equivalent for Bauingenieur? Anna, do you understand this?
No, sorry.
Okay, so Yuri, if you can.
Maybe it's the DGNB is like a certification system, and it's like higher rated than the normal German standard. Is this maybe the question?
Okay, so Yuri, if you can rephrase your question, please, and we shall address it. In the meanwhile, I would love to take a question from Ofer, who has raised his hand. Ofer, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm from Israel. We have a lot of waste from building. Is it possible to use it again and not sending it direct to the dumper?
So yeah, I think it really depends on what material you have. So for example, yeah, I showed you the example of the bricks where it is possible. It is also possible for concrete, but there you can only like recycle amount of 40% for the gravel. So I think it really depends on the material you have, if you can recycle it.
Okay, you can share your email in the end, so we can send you the material that we have. Great, thanks.
Awesome, thank you. Actually, I'm sorry, Elias, but we have a question from earlier that I would like to address because like a lot of time has passed since it was posted. It's from Marilia Ribeiro. I'm sorry if I mispronounced. Marilia said, thank you for the amazing presentations. In the circularity, the end of life is highly important to assess the sustainability or circularity of elements and buildings as well. Based on that, I would like to kindly ask to Mr. Chen Shalita how in their construction or renovations they are taken into one account circularity of the elements used for solar panels, and for Dr. Anna Braune as well, how the recyclability has been assessed for indicators. So Chen and Anna, if you want to address the question.
So I can start by just talking a few words about the project in the Jaffa Harbor. Since the buildings are restoration and they have historical value, then all the structure, the metal structure was kept, renewed, like given anti-rust treatment, and was reused. The skin is different, is a new skin. And regarding your question about solar panels, so I understand you're asking about reusing solar panel. So I think, unfortunately, we're not there. Currently in Israel, typically the systems are around 15 years maximum. And I guess in 10 years, we'll have an issue to recycle these systems. So it's more to the industry, to startups, to take the old panels and disassemble them and use the materials to produce new panels. So this is definitely a big item that all of us should address.
Yeah, and maybe
thank you so much. Yeah, Anna.
And maybe from my perspective, so in our building resources passport, we discussed the last year a lot about how to classify and what aspects are needed to describe the recyclability of elements or buildings. And there's actually, we have now identified four topics. One is how is an element demountable? So can you take it out? Secondly, as for the materials, are they separable? So can you separate them, the materials? And then third, are the materials that you generate or the products, can they be can they go into circles, into circular loops again in future? So how recyclable, what is the recyclability of the materials perspective? And there, of course, for example, it's important whether or not there's sort of the technologies are there, but also a question of hazardous substances that might prohibit future recycling. And then last but not least, is there a concept on how to dismount the building? So it's maybe a task for Anne and the planning and the architects to really provide a document that says with this building, and it's not about dismounting at the end of life, but it's also to give them a longer lifetime. So what can you do with the building? How adaptable is it? How can you dismount it? How can you expand it? And so on. And for this, we need actually, like, you know, when you buy something and there's a repair instruction, we need those instructions for buildings as well. So it's the four elements that we have identified for the future recyclability. Maria, I hope this is answering your question.
If I can, yes, thank you very much for your answer. I'm here in Germany, actually. I study in the University of Stuttgart. I'm from the civil engineering and the emissions study, Life LCA. So yes, it was really what I was looking for. And yes, when I made the question about the solar panels, is because usually the assessment and the sustainability, we have to think even in the planning since the beginning, right? So what will happen like after the 15 years, what will happen with the material we are planning to use right now? So that's the reason I asked it, not just what will happen with them, not just solar panel, but the concrete or anything, but how much the construction companies are already looking in the planning, like not just if we reuse some material that's in the facade, but the whole planning, you know, exactly the dismantling, I think that's the name, right? So how is this already arriving at the construction industry? Because we are in the academic side, and that's really good to listen how is this being applied. Thank you very much for both answers and for the presentation.
Thank you for the precious question.
Maybe to add one point to that, because it's really important. When we understand that we need climate neutral buildings, there is the effect of getting more technical installations into the buildings because we get the energy systems in and on the buildings. But at the same time, these elements do have maybe quite low lifetimes. So we really need to design in a way that applies and it takes into account the lifetime. So the more integrated systems are, like integrated photovoltaics on the facades, the more you have to make sure that you still have a long lifetime of the total elements. So that's maybe an advice, not to say Technic is, you know, healing everything, but maybe more passive systems, not using techniques at all, and still have a climate neutral building is very important to think of that. So maybe as an add-on on this discussion as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So without further delay, we want to keep up with our agenda. We would tolerate more questions, but at the end. So thank you all for understanding. Now I'm happy to invite Ruth Abraham. Ruth, she's the director of the Department of Public Space and Urbanism at ILGBC. Ruth, the floor is yours. Thank you for being with us.
Hello, so I'll share a presentation as well. One moment. Okay, do you see my full screen now?
Yes.
Positive.
All right. So I will present a little bit different point of view on circular economy, which we work on in the ILGBC in the past year and a half. We're developing an index for eco-industrial parks in Israel. It's not a new concept. We're adopting it from the world and we're making it more suitable to the Israeli reality. And it goes beyond the single building and it talks about a whole area. So why is it important to talk about eco-industrial parks in Israel? We are also committed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We want to be in one line with the international trends. And we also see ahead of us the international climate agreements and acts, and we want to be part of this. In addition, we ask ourselves all the time, why do we create an index? And then we look at our tools, and as we look at our tools, we see that we have many tools for the single building or for a residential neighborhood or for city centers to measure walkability. And then again, we can see that the government in Israel developed also a tool for measurement of new plans for housing, but there is no tool that measures how industrial areas are sustainable and how they work by sustainability principles. A little bit about industry in Israel. We have about 400 industrial parks, zones, which contain of more than 15,000 factories, in which about less than 10% actually are committed to report their emissions to the Ministry of Environment. We have several types of industrial park zones. Some of them are merged into the city, they're part of the city, they're becoming slowly brownfields, but as the demand for land in Israel never goes away, so they're being changed very fast. We have juxtaposing industrial parks that are adjacent to existing cities, and we have autonomous parks, which work independently. In order to plan, when we want to plan a factory, so we have the whole Israeli planning system. It starts with a master plan for the industrial park. Usually the master plans for industrial parks are enabling to, I'm sorry for the typos here. I see them just now. So we usually can get building permits out of it, and then a business license. We have several policy papers, data and planning guides that were published in Israel in the past few years. Among them, we can see the guidelines for planning industrial parks that talk about and a safe area for polluting factories. We see it right here in the red rectangle, and then it enables us to build a little bit more sensitive uses quite far from it. And we also took a look at the data that is being collected by the Statistical Agency of Israel regarding environmental issues in the industry. We have also regulation and environmental acts. Some of them are voluntary, some of them are mandatory. Among the voluntary tools, there are many tools of the Ministry of Industry and Economy, among them the Industrial Symbiosis Project and the Israel Resource Efficiency Center that reach out factories and they encourage them to make their waste into someone else's material, raw material. In order to generate a mission statement, we had to, first of all, define what are EIPs, eco-industrial parks in Israel, and then we can define what is a measurement, tool for this kind of parks. Our work is based on 3 steps. The first step was to understand literature review, which enabled us to understand what is going on in the world. And we understand that we're not alone. We're not inventing the concept of EIPs, of eco-industrial parks. The second phase of the work was to generate a mission statement and guidelines. And now we are developing the index itself, which is basically a table of indicators. So what are EIPs? EIPs are geographical areas, clusters that consist of productive units committed to the ideas of circular economy, ecology, and sustainability. They're based on several basic principles. I think the most crucial one is partnership between sectors, partnership between local authorities, partnership between factories and plants. The second one is LCA. We also talk about LCA of buildings, life cycle assessment, but how we design the product before it goes to the manufacturing process, how we design its life cycle, how we look at the raw materials, at the manufacturing process, at the life of the product and the death of the products and where it goes in the end of its life. And we look also on management and community and social aspects as a part of the EIPs. We took a look at EIPs around the world. I think the most interesting and most famous EIP is Kalundborg Eco-Industrial Park in Denmark, which is based on the factory that brings another factory that brings another factory. And the basics for this partnership is economical. Then we can also see what is going on in North Italy, an area that is full of factories that make a lot of furniture and leather products. And we see how they change the awareness towards sustainability and to raw materials. We also took a look at parks around the world. Among them is Host, which is next to Frankfurt. Host is a privately owned industrial zone, and the owner recognized the economic benefits of making a park sustainable one. And then actually he built a joint and mutual infrastructure that passes the raw materials from one factory to another, that makes all the deals and the business. It encourages the factories to make business among them. To get into the situation where we have a minimum waste that goes to the landfill. I also want to put attention into Kokkola Industrial Park, which is a part of a network of eco-industrial parks in Finland. That is the basis for this network is basically knowledge, how we transfer knowledge from one park to another, how we embrace awareness towards sustainability in industry and so on. We also took a look at measurement tools, various measurement tools, starting UNIDO, which is an international tool of the UN. And we also took a look at local tools like SEPA in China and APEA in Italy. Most of these tools that measure sustainability in the scale of industrial park are sets of indicators, quantitative indicators, in fact, that talk about social, environmental, economy, planning, and management aspects. In order to make a mission statement that a lot of stakeholders in Israel are committed to it, we're reaching out to stakeholders and to key actors in the Israeli industry. We did it by a participatory workshop that we threw a year ago at National Plant. We also work with steering committee, and we manage a lot of focus groups to reach the right list of the indicators, and we also have a pilot in Kidmat Galil Industrial Park. In September 2022, we went with an Israeli delegation to a tour to Finland to understand the network of the eco-industrial parks. And we understood that a lot of it is based on the concept and on plans that turn waste into energy, and a lot of it is based on awareness that is based on a top-down approach. Further on, we reached to the mission statement of what are industrial parks in Israel. We define them as geographically designed areas for heavy industrial uses that address environmental, social, and economic considerations and aim to minimize the ecological impact of industry. These zones will transform the interdependence between cities, industries, and the environment, utilizing economic strategies to foster connections between industry and the environment. We also defined key drivers that are all around circular economy, and they talk about bottom-up participatory approach, a multidisciplinary approach, raising of awareness towards sustainability and the importance of minimizing the raw materials that we use. And we also defined guidelines for the index. The index will be a guide for planning, management, and sustainable development. It will be a qualitative and quantitative set of indicators, and it will be a one-stop shop for all the knowledge that exists in Israel already. Now we are working on, we have a major table of 120 indicators, which is quite hard to process. And now we're working on shrinking it into 30 indicators, and we work with a lot of stakeholders and we throw a lot of focus groups on this issue. And we also think a lot about the implementation. There are quite good guides that talk about sustainability in industry in Israel, but none of them is implemented. And the question is why? And we are always asking. To reach the answers to these questions, we think first step about our end users. Who are our end users? They're probably the local authorities, the management firms of the industrial parks in Israel. What are the incentives that can make them make this change? And also about the operational model and about the regulation that is needed to encourage the Israeli industry to make this change, to make this step. This is it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth, for the brilliant presentation. We have a question from Shmuel already typed in the chat, so I shall begin with it. He says, how Israeli government support in establishment and development eco-industrial parks, and what can learn on other countries of the Middle East from Israeli experience of development eco parks? Thanks, Shmuel.
Wow, what a big question. It's quite hard to encourage the industry to make the change because we need to talk to the hearts of the factories managers. Of the factories owners, and their set of the set of their principles are based on economic principles. So the government needs to still. I don't think that the Israeli government have made this have reached the understanding of how to make this change, but it publishes a lot of papers. Publishing papers, we can say that maybe it's not as official as we would like it to be. But then again, I think that the major step that is needed to make the Israeli industry more sustainable is changing the awareness. And this is what the Israeli government doing. I hope that the Israeli government will make a crucial step and make a decision to adopt a circular economy as a national policy, as a national law or government decision that will enable, that will give budget to this issue in Israel. And I hope that it will happen soon. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you so much. So without further delay, I want to invite our last speaker. And after his speech, we can have a discussion and all of your questions would be presented to Dotan and the rest of the speakers. So I'm happy to invite Dotan Sela. Dotan is the founder and CEO of Circulus 3D. He's gonna deliver a speech and give us a short presentation. Dotan, thank you for being with us. We appreciate your participation. Just before you begin, I would like to ask everyone, if you can, please open your camera so that we can feel the audience that with us. It feels much better when we see faces on camera. Thank you all for cooperation. Dotan, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Fanny. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great, great. So, hi, everybody. Very glad to be here. My name is Dotan Sela. I'm the founder and CEO of Circulus 3D. We are an early stage Israeli startup focusing on replacing concrete with plastic waste. So, basically, we're addressing some of the most major problems in the construction industry today. The first is the skilled labor shortage in construction, and the second is sustainability. I'm sure that most of you know that cement production for concrete accounts for over 8% of global emissions. And basically looking and adopting new alternative materials is needed to make this industry much more sustainable. So basically where we see an opportunity is in plastic waste. And why plastic? Plastic is already used extensively in the construction industry, but recycled plastic not so much. And why is that? Well, basically everybody loves to talk about plastic recycling, but nobody really likes to actually sort the different plastic types. And I think we saw it in the presentations here. Today we have a lot of garbage and it's very usable, but sorting it is very complex and not economical. So the technology we've developed allowed to use the most commonly available recyclable plastics. We can mix them all together and melt them, and then mix them with aggregates and sand. This actually creates a kind of a polymer concrete where we actually replace the cement with plastic. We still have the aggregates and the sand, but we now have plastic waste that glues everything together. By reducing the need for sorting and processing, we can reduce the cost of plastic, because actually recycled plastic is very expensive. It's very expensive if you compare it to concrete. And it's a bit surprising, because a lot of time we think of it as waste. You know, what is the problem? It's waste, let's use it. So actually all of this sorting and processing makes it very expensive and not very attractive to the construction industry. So the second thing that we found out along the way is that a lot of big corporations with ESG goals that have production lines that have plastic products, they're actually looking for new ways to meet their ESG goals. One of the ways that we talked to several corporations that they're saying to us, look, we have a lot of plastic scrap and waste from our production lines. We are looking for something sustainable to do with it. We'll give it to you at zero cost if you can do something that is sustainable with it. So basically what our system does is it's an on-site automatic 3D printing system for low and medium load construction applications. I will explain a bit more about the application in the next slide, but basically the system receives melted mixed plastic waste, mixes it with sand and aggregates and other additives, and delivers it to a mobile platform that can move at the construction site or at the project site and actually deposit this polymer concrete wherever needed, and actually does it very fast. Here we can see some of the applications that are this technology can help us achieve. It can be sidewalks, bike paths, paths for pedestrian, low loads, not high loads like structural loads. Other issues, example are exterior cladding, siding, facades, infrastructure claddings and facings. And basically what the system does, it actually manufactures and installs the product at the same time. So it's actually, you don't have to manufacture it at a plant and bring it to the site and then have a lot of people need to do a lot of processes to install it. It actually deposits the material on site, similar to concrete 3D printing, if you're familiar with, but with recycled polymers. So we have a lot of applications. We can add additives per application. For example, UV stabilizers for places where the sun is an issue, fire retardants where fire is an issue, pigment fibers, and more. The technology behind this system is basically something that we've developed over the past year. In the picture, you can see the PLC printer that we've developed. I'm there just for scale. You can see it's pretty big, and it's actually a combination with plastic mass production and 3D printing, because we know how to produce a lot of plastics in a very short time, but we usually do it in very large equipment in factories, and then we have 3D printing, which can deposit material wherever needed, but it's usually very small. And we combine these two principles to make a mobile 3D printer that can output very large quantities. It's currently compatible with most of the commonly available mixed plastics that we use for our foods, for single-use containers, beverages, whatever. It's most of the recyclable waste stream in Israel and I'm sure in Germany as well. We're supported by the Israel Innovation Authority, and we filed a provisional patent for this technology. This technology is basically, it allows us to output large quantities of material at a short time. Because usually when you think of 3D printing, you think of small and it's very cool, but it's very small and slow, and it's for prototypes. With our PLC printer, we've already achieved a lot faster printing, because if we want to compete with concrete in construction, we have to do simple stuff, but we have to do it fast and we have to do it at a large scale. So just a small comparison that you can see at the bottom, you can see stuff that we've printed. For example, this block is 30 by 20. In a typical 3D printer, this would take 36 hours to print. We actually print it in 30 minutes right now with the PLC. The technology is scalable to much more than that. And obviously we use recycled plastic shreds, aggregates, additives, we can mix all together. So some of the advantages that we offer. First, I think also in the webinar, we talked a lot about costs. A lot of times sustainable is costlier, is more expensive than traditional construction. We can actually reduce the cost by reducing the need for labor. Labor is the main cost of a lot of the construction projects, and this is something that is continuously going up and up and up. By doing stuff autonomously and doing the on-site 3D printing, we can actually cut a lot of the costs, as well as with the lower, the cheaper raw material. Regarding emissions, because we use waste, basically the only emissions from the process are the melting of the plastics To melt plastic, you need to take it to 200 degrees, 250 degrees. To make cement, you have to heat everything to 1,500 degrees. So you can obviously see the big change here. Plastic also has a lot of advantages for green construction. For example, the reduced urban heat island effect, because plastic weighs a lot less than concrete, and it stores a lot less heat than concrete. We can do stuff like stormwater runoff management. Like, for example, we talked about sidewalks. So in sidewalks, we can, since it's 3D printing, we can incorporate drainage channels and stuff and absorption tanks and stuff like that. If we talk about facades, we can incorporate improved thermal insulation, because the great thing about 3D printing is that you don't have to fill the material. You deposit the material wherever needed. And with 3D printing, you can do stuff that is very, very low in material and high in air, and that's basically insulation. Basically, right now we are looking for a go-to-market. We have identified the cladding for infrastructure, for example, acoustic walls, dividing, returning walls in interchanges, highways, and inside cities as well, as a big enough market to start with. Low regulatory barrier is I think the main driver here, because we actually started with sidewalks, but a lot of regulations in sidewalks right now limit us a bit, because we need further development, and for facades there's much less regulation, and we have a lot of advantages compared to traditional materials, because we use recycled materials. Plastic is a great material for protection against the elements. Basically, plastic doesn't break down. That's the reason why it's so hard to get rid of it. We have unlimited aesthetic options because we can customize however we want, and overall costs are lower because we can save a lot of the costs for flavor. So a little bit about the team. I'm an experienced mechanical engineering manager. I've worked at several startups, and I've been developing 3D printers for the past 7 years, both as a job and as a hobby. I work with a team of experts and consultants. Yair is doing the business development. Uzi is one of the biggest experts in Israel about plastic recycling. And I also work with construction consultants like Dror, who specialize in eco-friendly building materials. Where we are now, so we've basically completed the POC. We've achieved high volume printing. We've shown that we can do a lot of textures, sizes, and mix the mixed plastic waste with aggregates. We validated the raw material at zero cost with several companies, and we are working on regulation and compliance and green construction reimbursement plans. This is something that we're starting to do right now. So basically, we're looking for pilot partners, design partners, and also investors to take this company to the next level. And if you'd like to hear more or request the deck, you can see the email on the screen. And thank you very much for having me and for listening. Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dotan, and for presentation. We have several questions actually in the chat. So we'll begin with the questions in the chat, but if anybody would like to raise a question verbally, they can raise their hand and I'll let them speak. So we'll start with Ayelet. She asked, does the heating process, I guess it's the heating process of plastic release toxic chemicals? Is it durable like cement?
Okay, so basically when you heat plastic, when you manufacture plastics, you don't melt, you don't set them on fire, you bring them to the thermoplastic temperature, and by doing this controllably, you don't get to burning them. And if you don't burn them, then you don't produce a lot of volatile emissions. So if you control the process like you do in traditional plastic processes, then you can not come close to the burning point. So that's about the volatility. And also the second question was about concrete durability. So obviously plastic is not concrete. There are limitations, and that's why we focus on low and medium load applications. By mixing aggregates and sand, we can achieve stuff that plastic is not usually known for. For example, if we talk about sidewalks, then if we mix sand on the top layer, we can do a lot of, we can actually resist the wear that otherwise soft plastic would have. And that's the great thing about the layering of the 3D printing.
Awesome. Thank you, Dutan. We have a question from Rebecca. Rebecca, would you like to ask your question verbally, or should I read it for you? Okay, I'll just, okay.
I just was wondering about microplastics ending up in the environment. If you're using it for streets and it wears off, like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, great question. So basically microplastics, because plastic doesn't break down to elements, microplastic is actually plastic breaking down into smaller and smaller and smaller particles. And basically, when you take the recycled plastics and put it in something that is massive, it actually helps prevent the microplastics, because if you put a plastic bag outside in the elements, then you will see it breaks down a lot faster than if you put like a thicker plastic block. So by putting a lot of plastic in a thick part, it actually helps trap everything in and not break down, because usually plastic is very, very thin. Our products are very thick. And regarding abrasion and wear and stuff like that, that's why we incorporate the aggregates and the sand on the top layers, like for anti-wear layers and stuff like that.
Thank you. We have a question from Gil Dulitsky. She says, a question to Dutan: how do current regulations in Israel coincide with your product, and what are the obstacles you still need to overcome in order to commence operations on site? What are the requirements on site to allow the 3D printers? And the second question, what points or chapters of the current 521 code or lead code that can be met via your product besides innovation chapter?
Okay, so regarding the first question, I will start with the second question. Regarding lead credits, etc. Basically, obviously recycled materials. Secondly is the reduced urban heat island effect, because plastic stores a lot less heat than concrete. Stormwater management, and also thermal insulation. So that's for the lead credits. The first question was, Susan, can you repeat?
Yeah, of course. So the first question was, what are the obstacles you still need to overcome in order to commence operations on sites?
Yeah, so regulation is a big issue in construction. Basically, as I said, we started with sidewalks, but while we believe it's very possible, a lot of the regulations that at least we are aware of in Israel talk about concrete products, like concrete pavers. And all of the regulation is very, very strict toward concrete, and plastic is a very, very different material. So basically, that's why I talked about our go-to-market, because actually facades and claddings have a lot less regulations, because they don't have to take much load, and that's the reason we are focusing on that area right now.
Okay, does anybody want to ask a question verbally, just to let the speakers talk or participate? Okay, I don't mind just reading the questions for you. We have another question from Noam. Noam says, in terms of circularity, how do you address the downcycling of your product? In terms of circularity, it's more valuable to keep the material in a non-mixed form so that it can be looped infinitely. For example, can this material be reused at the end of the building's life, or will it become more complex building waste?
Okay, great question. Basically, you are right. When you mix, it's a little bit similar to concrete. When you mix it with aggregates and when you mix it with sand, then it becomes harder to recycle. So basically, in the future, we can think about ways to recycle this material. For the meanwhile, I can say that because this process is very, it's very variable. I mean, we can do like, if we're talking about sidewalks, then we have the load bearing layer. We can do it from whatever plastic we want, and we don't really have to incorporate the sand or the aggregates. We can do just plastic, and for example, like 5 centimeters of plastics, and the top layer can be like 0.5 centimeter of a plastic binder mixed with sand and aggregates. So that layer would be harder to recycle, but the bottom layer would be pretty easy. But I agree, it's a challenge that we're thinking about for the future, and we have some ideas on how to address it.
Awesome. Axel actually asked the same question, so I won't repeat it unless Axel it's like in a different direction. Okay, so
I asked the question. It's the same question. It's the same question.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for raising the question. We have a question from Rafael. It says, what do you think about the idea that if there were more land available for buildings in Israel, then it was possible to build more sustainable buildings for dwelling with local materials? I mean, small ecological dwellings. This is a more open question, so Dotan or any of the speakers who would like to address it are welcome to do so.
I can answer that question, and I think that especially in Israel, which is very, very highly populated, and I assume also in Germany, but in most of the world, land is a precious resource, and we want to keep the open spaces as much as possible untouched for various reasons, and therefore I think it makes more and more sense to have construction in a dense location and to build higher floors and more floor levels than to disperse the construction. And I think that even if we build with more sustainable materials, we will still harm more untouched open lands than the saving carbon and materials. Therefore, I think we should go for the dense cities.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Hanin, if I could add, I completely agree. And I think we always have to keep in mind, and I think especially us in the construction or building industry, that sometimes you have conflicting goals. And I think especially like what Shen just said, you know, the question of the land. I mean, if we look into the loss of biodiversity as well, soil as a carbon sink, we really have to stop sealing land and in a big scale. So, and I think there we have as well that conflicting goals when we talk about materials out of, you know, natural resources such as wood or fibers or so forth. How does that agricultural part will fit into the whole picture? So I think it's a very holistic challenge we're looking into, but at least in Germany, we already have defined that by 2045, we have to be at a net zeros when it comes to sealing land. So if you build something somewhere, you need to basically free land somewhere else. So this is kind of where the goal is, but at the moment, unfortunately, if you look at how municipalities expand, how companies are building, that is not part of the decision-making process. And it still seems it's much easier to build somewhere new instead of converting and adding, like what Jen just said, putting that density as well into existing structures and city districts.
Thank you so much, Chen and Christine. We have an earlier question from Erez. Erez said, are there any thoughts about green building heating, discouraging wood burning that causes horrible air pollution while burning trees that should be holding carbon?
So yes, I think more and more municipalities in Israel are aware of the environmental harm of wood burning stoves. So there's so many much more efficient and sustainable ways to heat homes, especially in Israel, starting from thermal solar heating, which has been in Israel for the past 40 years, and heat pumps, which are now actually mandated. So we still see a lot of wood-burning stoves, and I think they should be gradually eliminated because definitely they're not environmental.
Thank you, Chen. We have another question from Shmuel Yerushalmi that says, is it reused bricks, can reused bricks contribute to lower prices of constructing processes? Probably Annie would like to address this question.
Yes, so unfortunately, the reused bricks are not cheaper than new bricks, but they're also not really more expensive, so it's neutral in cost. But yeah, I think maybe in future, in some years, they will be cheaper if the material prices are still rising.
Thank you so much, Annie. Does any speaker like to add to the answer?
Yes, I want to comment on that because in the example that I gave before on reused decks, actually the price that we see today is higher than raw material wood. So currently, since the market is new, we typically, I think, find that reused material is more expensive because it's very complicated to disassemble it and prepare it and make it available for new construction. So this is the part I think that regulation and governments need to step in to close that price gap. But I'm sure that after a few years of market demand, government can pull out their participation, and the market would be would have its own business plan. That's it.
Thank you so much. Does any of the speakers like to raise a question verbally or to comment or say anything before we conclude? Actually, I see there is another question on chat. What are the requirements on site to allow this technology? And is the hot weather taken in consideration? I think the question was addressed to Dotan.
Yeah, so regarding the hot weather, so basically we use thermoplastics that we already use. Unfortunately for us, the most common garbage and plastic waste is the stuff we use to heat our food in microwaves and put our plates in dishwashers. So it's already safe, also from toxins point of view, but also from the mechanical point of view. It's already safe up to 70 and 80 degrees Celsius. So that shouldn't be a problem. Regarding for the construction side, so obviously the construction companies and the sites have to adapt to new technologies and automation and all of these new stuff, and it's very hard for them to adapt. So that's a challenge that we are facing, but we believe that by lowering costs and being more ecological, then we can be attractive enough to get people from construction to adapt it.
Thank you so much, Dotan. So before we conclude, last chance for any of the speakers if they want to, sum up with some words before I sum up. Okay, so everyone's satisfied. Cheers to that. So in order to sum up, I would like to say that it has been a great honor to be able to host this webinar together with our partners in Germany, the DGNB. We are always thrilled about such cooperations and look forward to have more and more cooperations of the sort, and probably real life like delegations and that go beyond the screen. We think that the topic is of a massive importance, and we think that we need to implement serious implementations and effort to deal with the climate and the political change that we are now witnessing in the international and the national arena. This has important ramifications and consequences on the future of everyone, the future of our children, the future of the next generations. So now we hold the steering in order to lead the world for a better place. And with this positive note, I would like to thank you all for participating, for the speakers, and for all those who asked questions. We really appreciate your time and your attendance. Thank you all, and have a lovely rest of the day. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you, Hanin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great moderation, Hanin. Thank you.
Thank you all. Flattered.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very, very much. It was amazing. Very interesting.
Cheers.